Hey, my name's Henry Confidential.
Hey,
I'm Austin Pascal, and we are back. We took a little hiatus, similar to There'll Be Horror over there on Mondays. Little personal stuff got in the way, busyness, X, Y, and Z. So luckily for this show, Paul Thomas Anderson was capable of waiting, a couple of weeks. For me personally, because I've seen most of his movies a lot in my life, so at least they're fresh. And just also because it's not like technically relevant. Licorice Pizza just got put out on a digital and disc,
yeah.
but it's like not that big of a deal. So, how are you feeling? Did you miss the show? And generally
Yeah.
speaking, thoughts on PTA?
Oh yeah, no, I mean I always miss these things, man. These are always fun for me. It gives me a reason to obviously dig into movies either for the first time or rewatch something I haven't watched in a minute. And really we were just off for 3 weeks so I could watch these movies because they're very, very long. So, it took me a while to watch The Master and There Will Be Blood and, and Phantom Thread. There's some long movies.
Yeah,
But yeah.
mine.
No, PTA, I know he's one of your top fivers, if I got that right. One of your go-to guys that you're always
Yeah,
kind of looking out for his next project. I would say I'm like a casual fan in that I'm always kind of interested, but we'll talk about where his movies have gone recently, and I'm not as into. But we'll talk about it. I'm sure and my rankings might kind of reflect some of that. But yeah,
yeah,
I think the first one I saw in the theater. I know the first one I saw in the theater was Punch Drunk Love because that was the year I worked in the theater, 2002. So I saw everything that year, and yeah, I was aware of that one. So I did not see Magnolia in the theater. I did not see Boogie Nights. I was too young for that. Watched that one at Blockbuster. But yeah, I know for a fact Punch Drunk was the first one I saw in the theater. Yeah.
yeah. Theater first one I saw was Phantom Thread. Similar to
Mm.
pretty much everything with all the quote unquote classic and like mainstream directors, a lot of it's always going to be later because
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm 20, I'm about to be 29, so it's not like I'm young by any stretch of imagination, but in terms of the peak for most of the good films for a lot of these directors were earlier when I was, before I was seeing R-rated
Mm-hmm.
movies or whatever. So the first one I saw in theater was Phantom Thread, but definitely, and I think the first one I saw was Boogie Nights, but the one that made me become a fan was There'll Be Blood. And we're not, if
Mm-hmm.
you know anything with any of my shows and stuff, you know that it has an influence on me. So it's one of those
Mm-hmm.
things where PTA, like you said, yeah, he's a director that just has always stuck with me. Even the bottom ones that we'll get into, I still feel guilty from having them at the bottom. You know what I mean? It's one of those where I'm like, oh my,
I
like there's
don't.
that's fair. There's stuff there that like makes me like, wow, maybe I was just in a mood that day. You know what I mean? So it's one of those like we'll get into it, but yeah. So I will start
Mm-hmm.
and we'll
He's
see.
your boy, so you please, yeah, you
Yeah,
start.
yeah.
He's your boy, so you take the lead on this one, and I'll follow, sir.
I will start out by saying that all of his movies are fresh. So all of
Okay.
them are positives, three or higher stars. So I don't
Okay.
think that's gonna be the same for you, but I at least wanted to start that off. So my number 9 is Inherent Vice, and I think this is a one that I guess I went with this one at the bottom because there's nothing about it like it's semi straightforward. You know what I mean? Like it's not like
Mm-hmm.
overly straightforward. Like it's got PTA's kinks to it, the stuff that he likes to do. But for the most part, it's pretty straightforward. It's like a detective noir. Joaquin Phoenix is interesting. My biggest gripe about this movie is that he just talks like Joaquin Phoenix. Like his look makes it sound like he should kind of talk like John Bernthal with that grizzly voice, and he just
Right.
doesn't, and it throws me off. You're like, wait, what? Like it's one of those where it's like it always takes me out of it when I hear that. But yeah, the story's fine. It looks good, which most of his films do. Good cinematography. Like he knows what he's doing. On a technical level, it's just one of those where it's straightforward enough for a noir type of story that it's like I don't need to ever watch it again, or at least I don't
Mm-hmm.
ever have the desire to watch him. But Joaquin Phoenix, other than the fact that that's just on me wanting him to have like that grizzly, 70s, voice, you know what I mean? That Elliot Gould in The Long Goodbye type of voice, you know what I mean? Like having something going
Mm-hmm.
on there. The Humphrey Bogart type of, but he just sounds like Joaquin Phoenix, the whiny brat.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it's or the guy who's in love with his phone and her, you know what I mean? Like so it's just missing that little gravitas that little stands out. But I mean, like I still enjoyed the movie for what it is. It just doesn't like stick to me in terms of like love. You know what I mean? It doesn't do anything that stands out for this genre, for PT as a whole. Joaquin Phoenix's filmography, you know what I mean? It's fine. Like it's
Yeah.
good. Like it does what it was going for. It just doesn't stick with me.
Well, we can talk about it because my number 9 is also Inherent Vice, but because I flat out hate this movie. I don't like this movie. I don't like a single shred of this movie. I think this movie's awful. I think this movie is a complete misfire. I saw this in the theater, and again, it was coming off of There Will Be Blood and The Master and all that stuff. So I was like, okay. And so Inherent Vice and the marketing, if you go back and watch the trailers, sold this movie as a slapstick comedy, a period piece slapstick comedy. Like literally, it was all the little comedic random bits in the movie. It was the stuff where he's looking at the picture and is like, and like puts it back on the deadpan. I was like, okay, that's weird, but all right, that's interesting. Josh Brolin doing the pancake thing, moto panakeku, all that stuff. Like there was bits throughout the movie that they showcased. And then I go into the movie and I am bored shitless. I am so bored. And I'm pretty sure when I saw in the theater, if I remember right, I walked in with about 10 people in the theater. By the time the movie's over, I was the only person in the theater. I'm 100% certain of that. Everybody had walked out. Everyone.
Wow.
And yeah, there was not. I was alone in the theater for the last, I want to say 20 or 30 minutes of the film, just because I don't walk out on movies. I'll stick it out and watch the whole thing. But yeah. So coming back to it, I now own this movie on Blu-ray, and again, it's one of the a massive things where I own movies I'll never watch again on Blu-ray. Like what was the recent? Oh, the Star is Born. Yeah, I own that now. So I own Inherent Vice. So here, I gave it another chance. I said, okay, it's been a while. It's 2014, so it's been almost 10 years. I mean, 8, 9 years. And so I said, okay, let me put it in again, give it a fresh look. Set it straight. And like 40 minutes in, I was like, yep, I'm pretty sure I still don't like this movie and still don't like just about anything about it. I'm still bored. I still don't know what the hell's going on. I still don't know the story or what any of this has. The only things that were keeping me interested was every time Brolin popped up, his bits were amusing, like his little scenes when he's, in the police station with Joaquin, like talking to him and like the pink, like he was the only interesting character that I wish like he had been the main character, and I would have liked the movie a lot more. I'm not into this movie. I know there's some people that are because I guess it's based on a book, and some people are into it and think it's a decent representation. There's some people online I saw in things that are not into this movie that are fans of the book that think it's a bad interpretation of it. So I don't know. But whatever it is, I don't get it. I don't like it. The less said about it, the better for me personally. I don't like this movie, but I'm in that camp. Oh well, sue me. I don't like Inherent Vice.
Like I said, I feel like I'm more in the mid range just because I feel like it doesn't do anything despicable that it like makes me hate it by any means. Like it doesn't upset me. It just doesn't stand out to love it. So like it does what it was going for. I mean, if you mirror this with The Master with Joaquin Phoenix's performance of like not knowing exactly what's going on. It's an interesting like thought process of like how they're working well together. So or like their process together, and it's just curious. Like, is that an accident or is that a plan? I don't know, but yeah. So that's my number 9. That's your number 9 as well. My number 8 is his most recent Licorice Pizza.
Ooh, we're the same. We're the same on the bottom because it's also my number 8 because I didn't like it either. So
well, I thought
I'm not into it either.
It was. I thought it was fine. Once again, 3 stars. It was just missed potential.
Well, okay. To be fair, it's a 2-star for me. It bumps up a little bit higher than Inherent Vice because it was at least more watchable than Inherent Vice. But I still was not really into it.
Well, let me just put it this way: the fact that these are your bottom 2 make me happy for something I thought going into this. So that's interesting. But yeah. So Licorice Pizza. Obviously, I didn't. I mean, it was probably part of the plan, to be honest. I don't know, but the dynamic between the girl and the boy, I just didn't feel any actual chemistry. Like their acting was fine, but I didn't feel any actual chemistry. So the heart of this movie, like when I look at people's reviews and people's like acclaim for this movie, it's because of the childlike wonder, the coming of age aspect, the living your dreams and like going for it, you know what I mean? And like having each other's back, even if it's friendship, like I still didn't like it. It gave me Jenny and Forrest Gump vibes without any of the magic, any of the sparks. It was one of those where it's like they're just with each other, but they don't care about each other. And I just didn't care.
Yeah,
Just too long. Like there's like when I close my eyes, the only scenes I think about are the Bradley Cooper scenes, which arguably that's probably just from the trailer. You know what I mean? That
yeah,
scene and the scene of him running down the street, like, doing when he's in the suit or whatever, and he's like, "Oh, I want to," and it's like I feel like those are just
yeah.
more trailer moments. That's not even really the movie that did anything for me. But like there's a few times I smiled, and it once again it didn't do anything that I hated. There's the one scene with David Michael Higgins, what's his name? Mike Higgins, that guy.
Something like that. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I'll look it
with
up real quick.
the
But go
weird
ahead.
the weird
Yeah.
Korean or Japanese accent that I probably should feel bad for this, but I thought that was the funniest part of the movie. I don't know what the point was. I don't know if it was supposed to be some sort of satire or some sort of like, speaking on something, but it made me laugh. Even if it was like awkward laughing, it made me laugh. So I mean, there are some moments
Mm,
that I was like, oh, and I do like the grind, the hustle aspect where it's like he's actually kind of ugly, but he has that confidence, even if it's fake confidence. Like I do respect. I
sure.
respect the character in the movie more than I enjoy it, and I don't say that often.
Mm,
I know that's a cliche thing to say, where it's like, when people say like sophisticated, oh, I respect it more than I like it, but it's like I can say that when it comes to a mid tier level, where it's like I did. That's why it's not negative for me because I did actually respect most of the stuff it was going for. I just didn't connect, care, or particularly enjoy most. What are your thoughts?
No, I think these sort of school coming of age hangout movies where they're just kind of doing these hangout scenes, going from place to place on different nights or whatever. This stuff like Fast Times at Ridgemont High or Days of Confused are just not really my bag. I've kind of found I just don't really dig these movies. I just don't think I'm into it because yeah, again, I rented it. I was watching it, and about an hour in, I was just kind of starting to check out. I just was not invested in anything that was going on between the two main characters. I thought the relationship stuff was a little confusing, to be honest. Like they were into each other, but then they're not. But then they're like seeing other people, and then they're sort of back together. And then
Plus
she's
the
like
age
running
gap,
over to, and
a
then
lot
she,
of
yeah,
it.
the age gap is weird because it's like what 25 and 15. That's weird. And there's this stuff where she just like runs over there to show him his boobs and like runs away. Like it's just weird. There's weird scenes, and this is what I'm talking about with PTA recently. Is like the most of his stuff that he's been doing recently. I understand he's probably doing his passion projects at this point, and he's doing the movies he wants to make, and I'm happy for that. So I'm always interested in what he's doing, but the direction he's taken, I think, is just not for me. It's for somebody. It's just not for me. I'm just not kind of digging this most recent fare.
Yeah,
So
I
yeah,
mean,
I mean, it's not as unwatchable for me as Inherent Vice was. It had a few bright spots, and it was decent. I can see that obviously, as with his movies, very well made and acted and all that jazz. But yeah, I'm just not into this type of stuff. Like it's just
yeah,
not for
so
me.
the difference between this and Nightmare Alley, which really disappointed me, which I actually gave a negative review, is the fact that I at least wasn't bored when I was watching this. I was intrigued. I'm like, all right, where's it going? Where's it going? But I was like, all right, let's stick the landing. Come on, if you stick the landing, then I'll be cool with it. And it just never did. But at least I was always
Mhm.
interested in where I was gonna go. Whereas a Nightmare Alley, I'm like, all right, let's just get this over with. Like that was kind of the difference. So yeah, so it's a disappointment, but it's still decent. And if I watch it again, I might go in with lower expectations, and I might bump it up a half star. I don't do half stars, but in theory, I feel like I could technically bump it
All
up half
right.
star, or I could bump it down just because I'm like, nope. Actually, I'm actually disappointed I rewatched it. So yeah.
Hmm.
My number
All
7.
right.
I mean, at this point, I don't know if this would be your 7 because of once again prior knowledge of you. So we'll see. My number 7 is Hard 8.
We're close. We're
Okay.
very close.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so the reason that this is my number 7 is honestly, you can just like so the difference between all right, I'll compare it to Bottle Rocket from Wes Anderson, where it has a lot of the things that PTA can do. It's just not
Hmm.
refined, but there's something about like the charm and the comedy in Bottle Rocket that like makes it a favorite. Whereas this one is missing the PTA charm. It just is it's so close. You know what I mean? I really do
Mm.
care about Sydney. I like John C. Riley's character. I like that, the casino aspect of it. I like the crimes. You know what I mean? I like the elements there. It's just like
Yeah.
7 out of 10s, you know, like C's, not quite B's and A's of all the subgenres and sub things it's going for. But like,
Yeah.
I am intrigued and I do like a lot of it. So this is the highest of my 3 stars because honestly, this could be a 4-star if I'm in like a good mood and I want to like really connect to it on a different level. But as of right now, it does a great job of being a first time movie. Like this is one of those where it's like, if you watch this after watching all of his other movies, you're like, PTA is just missing it. But if like you just watch this movie and then you're like, wow, that was interesting. You're like, wow, that's that guy's first movie. Wow, that was his first movie. That was actually, you know, it's one of those where you give it the credit because it's better than it should be given the scenario, but it's also not as good as it could be given PTA. So, what are your thoughts on
Yeah.
Hard Eight? You said
Yeah.
not far?
Hard. No, I'm in a 3-star territory with that. It's my number 6, so
Okay.
we'll show over my 7 for now and go to my number 6. But yeah, Hard Eight was one that I watched for the very first time. I wasn't even super aware of it until we were going to do this, and I was like, okay, I've never seen this Hard Eight, so I went into it fairly blank. Like I didn't know much about it. I looked up the cast. That was all I knew. So I was like, oh, Philip Baker Hall, that's cool. Like because I love Philip Baker Hall. He's a great character actor, and the fact that he was
Oh yeah.
like pretty much the lead of this movie again was interesting. And then John C. Riley, obviously, who is a go-to for him, obviously shows up in a lot of other movies. And I was like, okay, Gwyneth Paltrow, Sam Jaw. I was like, oh, Sam Jaw. Okay, geez, like, okay, he got some heavy hitters for his first movie, right? Like he got some good solid casting. And I didn't know anything about it. I knew something involving gambling. That's all I knew.
Yeah.
And so it was one of those things where maybe I didn't really have expectations, but like you see one of these movies and you think it's going to be when he's doing the early scene in the diner with Riley and he's like, okay, we can go back to this casino and I'm going to take you with me to do that. You're like, okay, so he knows ways to like scam casinos or like help get him rich or like, but it's not really that. It's just like these little tips and tricks.
Yeah.
So the movie does not go where you think it's going to go as far as
it's more like
he's
a
going to show him how to like
type of vibe.
Yeah. It kind of swerves you because you think at first it's like, oh, I'm going to show you how to get rich in Vegas, you know, off of doing this, counting cards or whatever it is, you know, how to work these scams. And it's like, no, he's just going to show you how to get a free room and how to work these cards and these rewards programs and all this stuff and just kind of get by. He's not going to make you rich, but he'll help you get by. And so it was interesting in that where it never took it really to that next level. Even the stuff with Sam Jackson later where he's like trying to rob him and stuff because, you know, he knows the stuff about his dad and all that. Like it escalates a little bit, but it never really gets to like that height of like real huge escalation. So it's a strange movie in that. And I know it's probably the limitations of the budget and what he had to work with being his first movie. So I get that. It just ended up being a curiosity that I probably won't go back to a lot. But I did find myself wondering where it was going to go and still along for the ride and still invested in John C. Reilly's character. The ending was fine. You know, again, everything about this movie was fine. It was like fine. It was perfectly entertaining. It was a decent, and when you know it's a debut film for him, I was thinking about a good comparison for this. You know what's a good comparison to this is when you go back in Spielberg's filmography and what was his first theatrical film? It was the Sugarland Express, right? Like it was like this Goldie Hawn, you know, kind of curiosity is sort of, you know, cop chase thing movie, but like he does that and then he does Jaws. It's like with this he does Hard Eight and then he does Boogie Nights. Like it takes like a big jump, you know what I mean, like right after. So this is like one of those debuts and not like Reservoir Dogs where he comes like banging right out of the gate, you know, and makes like a great all-timer. It's like he took some baby steps in this one, and again that's fine. So some of these debuts are better than others, but yeah, I mean overall I enjoyed the watch. I just don't know if there's anything that will make me go back to it. I will say that I ended up buying it on Vudu because I tried to watch it on Pluto and there was a 4-minute ad break every 8 minutes, and it was horrendous. And I just ended up being like, no, okay, I'll just pay $10 and just buy it. Oh my God, this is so bad. Stop it. Like again, literally it took one ad break in the diner and then they go on the road, you know, they're like driving to Vegas, like, and like 6 minutes later there's another ad break. I was like, okay, enough. I'll just buy it. Jesus, stop.
I get it.
Fine.
That's
I own,
the perfect way to sell.
All right, fine. I own Hard Eight now. Jesus, on digital is fine. But yeah, it was good, you know, and you could see. Obviously, he was setting up some of his players that he would use later. So, you know, that was cool. Like Philip Seymour Hoffman just as like a random casino player in this movie, you know, just like at the craps table. So that was fun. But yeah, it was good. It was good. Entertaining enough. If I was going in expecting a debut film, it was a solid debut film. I'll just say that. A 3-star debut film.
Another comparison I give it to is imagine a non-film school / obviously not a huge budget, but a bigger budget version of like Following, where it's like it does
right.
what it's going for. Obviously, this has a little more extra, but this is equivalent to like what Following would have been if it wasn't essentially a film school type of movie. You know what I mean? So
or like Pi with Aronofsky, like
yeah, exactly.
Pi going from like Pi to Requiem, like kind of the bigger step,
Exactly.
So yeah, but it was all right, it was all right.
And that's once again, obviously you're negative on the bottom two, but for you, or bottom three maybe, depending on what you think of the next one.
Yeah, we only go up from here.
But this was your six. But my point of what I was saying is the fact that you're like his beginning is like meh, but it's like it's still at the mid before the middle. You know what I mean? It's still, so most of his filmography is at least positive. So that just shows like these type of directors. That's why we pick them, because there's some merit within them. So we skipped your number 7. What is it?
It's Phantom Thread. So Phantom Thread is 7.
Wow,
but
I am so shocked on everything. All right, I'm so happy.
But I'll say this. I enjoyed Phantom Thread way more than I thought I would going in. I will say that. So I found myself actually getting into it. Now, the reason it's at number 7 is because it's still a subject that I don't give a shit about. But what kept me invested is Daniel Day-Lewis. And I was texting you, I was messaging you through the movie, and I was like, dude, he's going hard with like the insults in this movie. Like, he's a savage. Like, he is a savage on some of his insults, where he was like, this relationship he has with this muse, or whatever you want to call her, this assistant, like the one scene that stuck out with me when she comes in to bring him tea, and he's like deep in his dress making or whatever, and she's like, "Why are you interrupting me?" She's like, "Well, I just thought you might like some tea, like, what are you doing? Get out of here! Like I'm you're throwing off my thing." And she's like, "All right, I'll take the tea. All right, you'll take the tea, but the distraction still lingers or something." Like, it's so he's such a savage in this movie, like in such a subtle way. Like, he drops those throughout the movie to like everybody he meets. He's got this personality, and what I was invested in was the character, not so much the movie, if that makes sense. Like, I was following the character. I was into. It's a
perfect definition of the performance elevates the movie.
Yeah, it's definitely like a character study thing, and I was into what Daniel Day-Lewis was doing with the character, and I was following him, not so much like his profession of this dressmaking. Like, I don't care about that. That's just not my bag. And this relationship, just the curiosities of how this is going to work or not work, and kind of where it was going to go. So I found myself way more invested in that. I don't know how many times I'm going to go back and rewatch this movie. Probably never. I might go back once. Like, I watched it on Netflix. I might put it on and like skip to a couple scenes, maybe.
Listen to the music, or I mean, it's a vibe.
Well, I'm more likely to go on YouTube and watch like a Daniel Day-Lewis from Phantom Thread insult like montage, like a compilation of him just being a straight, a savage. But so that's what I'm more likely to watch. But I will say, like, it's a movie that I ended up. And this is definitely complimenting it, because going into it, I was like, I was kind of dreading watching this movie. I was like, I don't know, because like my ex loved this movie, but like she loved it because of the dressmaking stuff. I was like, oh God, like, what is this going to be? like what am I watching? And I enjoyed it way more than I thought I would. So I'm giving it a compliment. It made it to a 3-star movie, and I enjoyed it for what it was. So I will say that.
Absolutely.
So it wasn't a total horror show.
There you go. I'm going to mirror pretty much everything you're saying, except for I'm going to add to it. The thing that elevates it from a 3-star movie to a 4-star movie is I love the ending. I love the ending. That ending will never leave me. You know what I mean? Because it's a combination of obsession, duty, loyalty, and just kind of I don't know the phrase of how to phrase it, but like your placement. You know what I mean? Like, you have your part in your situation,
your role in this situation, or it's your destiny, or like wherever your fate, whatever you want to call it.
Because
you're kind of stuck with the situation.
The twist could have went one of two ways. It could have gone a reactionary, and it could have been like a over the top climax, or it could have been accepting, which is what it was. And I gave it so much love for that, because of it flipped the script. Because it's when you have such a dominant person who finally is submissive in a scenario like that, it brings the balance, and that doesn't happen very often. Like I don't remember where I heard this before, but I heard you're most of the time, if you're a dominant person, or just in general, I guess technically, your porn searches are like the exact opposite of your normal lifestyle and your preferences and your personality in terms of like physical traits or like mental traits. I mean, like they say like cops are more into like submissive type stuff because they are so dominant in their lives that they want to take a step back and not be so overly dominant because it's exhausting. They finally want to have a chance
You
to
know
like.
what it's like, Henry? It's like these things you hear about where there are these girls that exploit these super rich CEOs and make them their little submissive dudes and tell them to like go out and go to the ATM and humiliate them, like bring me $500 right now, and like I'm gonna insult you and call you pathetic. But it's like these rich CEO like heads of these companies or whatever, and like they have this personality where they like to be brought down to like the level. Like that's a real thing. Like that's a real psychological thing. If you look
So
into it, it's interesting. So
I'm 99 point
and a
nine
good
nine nine
racket.
nine 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 percent sure you've never watched Euphoria, but
No.
there's an element in that show where a
Mm.
girl does webcam stuff
Hmm.
and she has a guy that wants her to do some weird stuff like make fun of him, and she's
Yeah.
trying to be nice like, no, you need to make fun of me or else I can't get off. I don't even need you to take your clothes off. I just need you to like bully me, and it's like,
Insult me, yeah,
oh,
it could
that's
belittle me,
crazy.
and yeah, and call me like a piece of shit, and like say
Yeah.
my dick looks strange, and like all that kind of stuff.
Yep.
Yeah, just make him look horrible. No,
That's
that's a
exactly
real
what that
thing.
is. Yep.
Yeah, that's a real thing.
And it's one of two ways. It's because of the lack of confidence that you kind of just have to go, you have to double down on it, and you have to accept
Hmm.
it, and you have to kind of like, kind of like two negatives equal positive essentially.
Hmm.
Or in the case with Woodcock, is that you need to it's not Woodcock, is it? Yeah, it's Woodcock, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, it hit me weird because I was like,
Reynolds.
Mr. Woodcock,
Yeah, yeah,
the Billy Thornton
yeah,
movie. I was like,
exactly. I haven't said it out loud in so long that I was like, did I just reference Billy Bob Thornton? Like, yes,
no, his name is
Reynolds,
Reynolds Woodcock. Yeah.
Reynolds Woodcock, where he's just such the dominant that he wants that's what turns him on, and
Mm,
that brings balance to the force. So
yeah.
yeah, that's what separates it from, because once again, similar to you, I don't have an affinity for this genre and this style of film, but PTA is able to bring a magic, and Daniel Day-Lewis, God rest his soul, potentially,
Mm.
eventually in the future, his acting soul as of right now. He's just the man for a reason. Like, he is able to make me give a shit about more of this movie than I should. So yes, that was my
Yeah. No,
number two.
I'm in the same boat. Yeah, we're in the same way. So yeah,
There you go.
that's why it scooted into Star Territory because I was invested in him. So yeah, I was fine with that.
All right,
Sounds
so
good,
we are
man.
gonna jump into the top five.
Five. Yeah.
Do you want to go or do you want me to go? What do you think? Based on your number, what do you think?
Yeah, I don't know where you're going to go, and you might not know where I don't know. We'll see. So, I will say my next three, my 5, 4, and 3 are all 4-star territory for me, and then my
I'm
top two
so
are
sorry.
5.
I am so
So,
confused. I'm excited for this, but I'm so confused on what we're gonna what's
okay.
happening here. So,
So
my
which one's
number,
gonna, or and more of which one's gonna be where?
yeah,
So,
mine.
okay,
I'll
you
just
go ahead.
go.
You go ahead.
My number five. Oh, these are all 5 stars now. These are my top five are 5 stars. So this is,
Okay.
yeah. So
All right.
actually, Phantom Thread was my only 4-star, with Heart 8 potentially being a 4-star depending on my mood. So yes, these are actually 5 stars. And honestly, we're just going on rewatchability. My number 5 is The Master.
Okay.
I love this movie, clearly. But if we're ranking
Mm-hmm.
PTA, one of my
Mm.
favorite directors, one similar to Tarantino, where it's like an amazing, great movie is going to be lower than for some people because of how high I have his top. You know what I mean? So what I will say
Mm-hmm.
is 10, 15 minutes too long. No, I wouldn't say too long, but it could be.
Mm.
There's a difference between too long and could be shorter. This could be shorter, but there's nothing in here that
Okay.
I specifically would take out. You know what I mean? Like, I don't feel like I don't feel like it feels long, but I feel like it being this long affects the ranking. Joaquin
Mm.
Phoenix and Philip Seymour Hoffman are fantastic. The Freddie, he's a character that on
Yeah, he is.
my last watch of this, going back in his times and his growth, one of my favorite scenes is the scene when he's doing the pictures with the guy, and it's one of those things where people do this. You're having a bad
He's
day.
putting the thing closer, and he's like straightening
I'm
his tie
sweating.
out. He's like getting up in his face, and like yeah, making him
When
uncomfortable.
people are having a bad day,
Yeah.
dude, this is what they
Hmm.
do. They cause drama. They cause trouble. And
Yeah.
it's one of those where he has no confidence, so he's out there falling in love with this girl who's young, you know what I mean? And
Hmm.
a school girl, not technically school, but like those vibes where it's like it because he can feel like a man, you know what I mean? The it's not quite like a PTSD, war affection, but it also isn't at the same time. Like it's a little bit, it's one
Yeah.
of those where it hints that it could be like, did the war fuck him up? Is he just already mentally unstable and it just the combination does it? Is it his lack of confidence? Is it family issues? The processing scene obviously is the scene. Like that's what you talk
Yeah.
about. Like it's chilling. The amazing performances. The when you just start getting the teardrop of just his eye watering because he's trying to hold it in, and then he starts slapping himself and he's getting pissed because at first he's thinking it's a joke, but then he's just they're going back and forth and he's all locked in, but like he just can't win. And then when you start to see that Amy Adams might actually be the guy, and Philip Seymour Hoffman is kind of like just the face, you know what I mean? It's similar to like in Tenet, like
The bathroom scene, yeah, where
yeah,
she like walks up behind him, yeah,
yep,
yeah, no, and I won't go into it, but yeah, when she like walks up behind him and is like whispering in his ear and stuff, yeah,
yep.
yeah, that's yeah,
And yeah, so this movie's beautiful.
yeah,
My probably my second favorite scene is when they're on the bike and they're going out into it because it's a metaphor for like being free and like letting go.
hmm
You know what I mean? But you do it like, hey, let's do. You know what I mean? It's one of those. And I love when the guy calls him out for his bullshit. He's like, oh, what's all your backup and research and where's your facts? I hear you saying it, but where are you getting it from? And he's like, do you believe, or like whatever he fought back, he was trying to like fight back and he's like just trying to be louder. Philip Seymour Hoffman, he's just being louder, thinking that that's
hmm
going to like intimidate him or scare him or at least get the people behind him to like believe, you know what I mean? It's just that's
yeah,
just it's so fantastic how they're able to do the concept of like Scientology in a film. Once again, technically a subject matter I don't give a shit about. Most of these movies I don't give a shit about most of the subject matter, but PTA doesn't ever put himself in a box. You know what I mean? He's able to find a way to tell his story through different subject matters, and it's fantastic. Yeah, I just can you talk about this yet?
almost because it's my number four, so
Okay,
I'll go ahead and
there you
say
go.
that. But I'm close. But I'm close. But again, these are all 4-star territory, so it's yeah. I'm kind of with rewatchability sort of thing on this one. But yeah, I hadn't seen this movie since the theater. I know I
How
saw
did
it in
it
the
look
theater
on
in
your
2012.
TV? And I know you had the 4K,
It
right?
looked pretty damn good. Yeah, I got 4K and it was on Netflix, but it was pretty high end. Like it looked great. Yeah, all the opening stuff on the beaches looked amazing in the boat. You know, where he's like laying up on that, up in the crow's nest or whatever, and just flying around. It looked great. Yeah, and this was one I had remembered liking it, but I just hadn't gone back to it for whatever reason. And I think it's because it's one of those experience movies where you just have to let yourself kind of get sucked into it. And I was like, I was thinking during it, I was like, my buddy Jordan had never seen this, and I was like, he would hate this movie. Like he would hate every fiber of this
Oh yeah.
movie, but I like it. And yeah, I get into it. I remembered the not the processing scene, not the
Yeah, processing
interrogation
one.
scene. Although it's almost like an interrogation scene, where he's just grilling him
Definitely has that
left and right.
dynamic. Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, it's one of those. It's one of the great, yeah, back and forth acting scenes of all time between two great actors. I love the stuff where he's just doing them all the tests, like the window thing where he keeps telling him to feel the window and
Yeah.
like tell me about the window and
Kind of like an
walking
out
back
of
and
body
forth in the
experience.
wall.
Like they're doing acting,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? But it's like mind control slash more of
Uh huh.
it's really a metaphor. He's not actually hypnotizing him. He's just making him look like a fucking idiot in front of people,
Yeah.
and he's able to make him believe that he's hypnotized, but he's really just making him do something. You know what I mean? Just by his
hmm
word, and that's essentially a cult, you know what I mean? And they bring it up
Yeah.
multiple times in the movie, and they're not afraid to acknowledge, like, yo, is this a cult? You know what I mean? Like, and that's the difference between a movie that from a different director who wouldn't actually call out its bullshit or its potential bullshit. Like it gives both
Yeah.
sides. It doesn't have one way or the other, and it provides layers, and it provides you the opportunity to make your choice on how you think it.
Well, they present like the one guy at the little party that's like calling him out on the bull. Isn't this
Yeah,
all bullshit? But you can't prove this, you can't prove that. And he tells him to leave or whatever. And then like there's a bit where he gets arrested and like they're investigating him and things like that. So I mean, he presents the other stuff, but he also doesn't treat you like a dummy to where he thinks that you can make your own decision about what's going on. You can either be with him, in his sort of philosophies on life, or you can think he's a cuckoo, wacko, like whatever. He's a cult leader. Yeah, he'll Anderson will let you, excuse me, let you make that decision and figure it out yourself. So, and just through the story and the experience, and also interpret the way, you know, Freddie at the end is he's using the lines when he's with the girl in like the room, you know what I mean? But it kind of in a joking way, but is he still kind of drawn to it? Maybe, you know, it's one of those things where you can kind of interpret that either way. I just wanted to comment. I like going back and watching these movies that I hadn't seen in a long time and seeing people that I didn't realize were in the movie when I
Jesse
pop up, like
Plemons.
Jesse Plemons, yeah, and Rami Malek like pops
Yeah.
up, and I'm like, oh, it's Rami Malek. I was like, okay, and then Jillian Bell, who like
Yep.
I didn't know until like 22 Jump Street, you know, a few years later, like pops up at that wedding scene or like all that stuff, and I was just like, oh, like that's always just a nice surprise when you go back and watch these movies and you know the little character people in the background. So that was fun. But yeah, it's definitely a movie that you have to pay attention and kind of let yourself get drawn in, and you can't, you know, it's not a movie you can watch while you're,
It's
you know,
definitely
thumbing
an
through Facebook or something. Yeah.
it's a dramatic epic. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
It's a character study. It's about Scientology, so it's about something it's constantly preaching, and it's like it's doing a thing where it's like you can't just listen, you have to hear. You know what I mean? And so
Hmm.
you have to like really, if you're all in, then you're all in. If not, that's why this is a polarizing movie, because people don't understand that. They really think that, oh,
Yeah.
it's boring and it's just all spectacle. And it's not saying nothing because they're listening, but they're not hearing, and that's the difference. So yeah,
Hmm.
this actually was my number 4 for the longest. And I flipped with my new
Hmm.
number 4 at the last minute. So like, yeah, this any given Sunday, like I honestly think I just quote my number 4 more, and that's the only reason it flipped. And
No,
it
right, right, right.
when I was like,
Yeah.
all right, let me tinker one last time. Like it's really that's all it is. But what is your number 5?
My number 5 is the Adam Sandler vehicle Punch Drunk Love,
Okay.
which I used to like more than I kind of do now. Going back to it, it's still a 4 star for me. Like it still is good. I just remember liking it more when I saw it in the theater, and it just didn't hit as hard this time. So the reason it's number 5 is I don't see myself going back to it again after this, honestly. So it's just going to be one of those movies. But yeah, it's interesting. When I saw it at the time, you know, I was seeing everything anyways in the theater because obviously I worked there. I was just watching everything, and I had seen, you know, I was like, oh, okay, Adam Sandler. It's definitely not like a usual comedy for him. Like he's doing something different here with this director. And yeah, I mean, it's still very good. It's just a very quirky movie. It's a very quirky movie that either you're gonna roll with or you're not. And the relationship between Barry and Lena is just it didn't work as well this time for me. Like I don't know. There was just curiosities about it that I was more invested in Barry's character than the stuff with him and Lita. Just the stuff with him like getting blackmailed by like the phone sex worker and like all the anxiety at work and like doing the
That's that
coupon
Matthew
stuff with
Man.
the pudding, like all the stuff he's doing in his job. Like I was more invested in that than I was the relationship this time. So
Okay.
that's kind of why it dropped down just a little bit for me. And I like the stuff with him and you know Hoffman as the boss and all that stuff and all the side characters. But like yeah, just the little things where all of his sisters are like poking fun at him in the parties. That's why he doesn't want to
Did
go.
he
Like he
call him
knows
Gay
that's
Boy?
and like he knows that's it's funny because he knows that's gonna happen and then he goes anywhere and it happens and he's like, well, god damn it, like I knew this was gonna happen. Like you know he knew they were just gonna make fun of him, ask him why he's single, why
Why are
he,
you
they
wearing
think he's
that suit?
gay. Yeah, why are you wearing this all, like what are you doing, like, but he's one of those quirky guys who I know we've all met people like this that just have their own little
Did you ask
way
what's
of
his
doing
name?
things. And
Did you tell what's his name that if he's a doctor, you need a psychiatrist? He's a gentleman.
yeah. Yeah, no, I mean there's those funny bits in the movie that like make you laugh, but it's not an out and out like slapstick
Yeah.
Sandler comedy or anything, but there's like those weirder, more social awkward situational kind of stuff, and those back and forth, and it's one of those anxiety movies kind of like he would do later when in Uncut Gems, where it's just all these uncomfortable situations that
Yep.
he's being put in, especially when the lady's like, I'm going to charge your credit card anyways on the phone. He's just like, you don't know where I live. I'll cancel the
All right,
car. Oh, I'll
goodbye.
come after you. All right, goodbye, bye. Yeah, like all
Treat
that
it like a
stuff
Georgia
was,
peach.
yeah, that's the stuff that I really clung on to. Just this study of this character, of Barry who has these anxieties and kind of does that. I just wasn't as invested in the couples
Yeah.
relationship stuff. That's really the only thing. So that's the only reason it's at number 5. It's still a very good movie. It's still one that I enjoy. I just don't see myself going back to it a lot,
Yeah. And
personally.
I'll tell my reasonings in a minute when I talk
Mm-hmm.
about it, but to
Mm-hmm.
kind of combat what you're saying, not combat, but just give my opinions
Yeah.
on that. My number 4, like I said, last minute, this was my number 5, but honestly, I quote this movie a lot. It's not my top 3 just because, ironically, this movie's shorter than my number 3, but the pacing isn't as swift in like the beginning of the third act, the end of the second act, the beginning of the third, and there's a weird
Mm-hmm.
stretch where I'm like, oh my god, I don't really care about this part, and it's ironic because some of the stuff is fun, but it's just like, all right, let's wrap this up a little. Boogie Nights.
It is a Boogie Nights, right? Yeah, I knew where you're going with that.
And so I love Mark Wahlberg, like he's one of my favorites. I love the
Mhm.
beginning. I love the build up because it's so like snappy. It's very Scorsese-esque with Goodfellas,
Mhm.
Casino, how it's like building up. But as soon as you like jump into the established porn star stuff and kind of the decline, it falls similar to The Wolf of Wall Street with me, where at that point, the ironically the height, when they're at the height of their powers, that's when they're most interesting. When they start to decline, it's just not
Mhm.
as engaging. You know what I mean? So like, if once again, Wolf of Wall Street's in my top 100, it's a 5-star movie. This is not quite in my top 100, but it's a 5-star movie. But if I'm nitpicking, it's the thing where it's like, out of these top 5, I'm less likely to watch this one, even under the master. But I talk about this all the time. Oh, my wife's got ass in her cock. You know what I mean? Like stuff like that, where it's like, random stuff. And he's like, what do you bench? He's like, oh yeah. And he's like, you want a margarita? And just random things that they're just the relationship between Eddie, which he
I
Dick
want,
Dirt,
want to kiss you on the mouth. You want to kiss me, or
He's like, you like my car? You like my car? You like my car? It's just like yours. You like my car? Like Philip Seymour Hoffman is just so great. Just
he's so
Scotty.
great.
Oh my god. You know what I mean? Like, I love it. It's just literally that third act, as soon as they're getting desperate, like when he gets away from Burt Reynolds' character and he's his cockiness, he started getting to the
Mhm.
drugs and stuff. You know what I mean? It got to
Yeah.
him. But like, if we ever did like a let's rank stuff like top 10 scenes of all time, the drug
Yeah.
scene with Alfred Molina is
Yeah. He's so
easily
great.
in my top 10. He was like, oh, he's Chinese or something. They like firecrackers, like just pop, and it's just that adds to the tension. Then you got Jesse's
Yeah.
girl, where it's and it's just like, oh my god, dude, it's so scary.
Well, and when you find out that scene was almost based on a real thing that the porn star John Holmes kind of did. He
Yeah,
tried to rob a drug dealer in real life, a guy sort of like Alfred Molina, and PTA had heard that story and kind of did a scene that was similar to that with obviously a well-endowed porn star robbing a robbing a drug guy. It's very, very similar. So when you know the backstory of that, it kind of makes that scene
yeah.
even better. But yeah.
So I mean, that's really one. Ironically, after that scene, it kind of starts to dip for a little
Mhm.
bit, and it's like Raging Bull at the end of it, which is ironic because of the mirror scene. It kind of
Yeah.
like mirrors that a little bit, where it's like Raging Bull, the rise of Jake LaMotta is fantastic, and then as soon as he starts to decline, it's just not as. And
Mhm.
that's a weird thing for me because it's the same thing with Goodfellas, the rise and then the end. You know what I mean? It's so I just don't like those because it just affects the pacing, and it just ends on like a sour note in terms of like the ride. It's imagine
Mhm.
going on a 5-minute roller coaster. The first 3 minutes are like super fun. It's a bunch of loops, and then it's just a straight line for the last 2 minutes. And it's like,
Oh,
all right, you know what I
okay.
mean? It just doesn't have any highs anymore. It just coasts for the end, which I'm enjoying it. It's still a thrill because it's still fun. You're going fast, but it just doesn't do anything for me. So it's ironic that
Mm.
literally all those movies, I kind of have the same. My only issue is similar with all of those movies, and it's these types of singular character studies of bad guys that are likable. And I like that. And you'll see later, technically. But yeah, so that's my number 4. I'm guessing you can't talk about it yet. I'll jump into my number 3,
Okay.
which, like I said, it's longer than number 4, but this movie is just bing, bong, boom, boom, nonstop. It's Magnolia. Uh,
Hey, we match. Let's talk
there we
about
go.
it. Number 3. Yeah.
Magnolia is just awesome. like I,
Yeah.
it's one of those. All
Well,
right,
and didn't you have to argue against me for Magnolia in our
yeah.
battleground match?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, right.
That's
Because and I took a gamble because if you remember when we had that PTA question and you picked Punch Drunk Love, and the question was
underrated.
underrated PTA movie, so you picked Punch Drunk and I picked Magnolia, and I hadn't seen Magnolia at the time, so I took a gamble,
Yep.
and I was like, well, win or lose, I got. I mean, as far as like whether I like it or not, I got to argue it, right? So I better come up with something. And yeah, and so I bought it on Vudu. I watched it and like I loved it. Like I loved the movie like to pieces. And yeah, it was long, but like I got way into it. I've watched it 2 more times like since
Yep.
then. I
Let
like
the
as
kids
far as
know.
like and like not like sitting down and watch it, but I put it on like 2 more times like while I'm doing stuff.
Oh,
Like because it's
I've
just
watched
there's great scenes.
the first 10 minutes of this that opening thing. I've watched that probably like 20 times because I've started the movie and I'm just like, oh, it's just so fun. You know what I mean? Just getting invested in that world of nothing.
Oh
So
yeah.
and shout out
But
to
go ahead. Yeah, it's your pick.
Magnolia would be his number
Mm,
one. So I just wanted to
gotcha.
give this tattoo right here is a magnolia, and I got that from this movie
Okay.
because it just goes into the concept. Shit happens, dude. Like you could do whatever you want in life, and at the end of the day, shit's just gonna happen. The
Yeah,
world is
yeah.
gonna do what it's gonna do, and this is a perfect, a perfect concept of that.
Hmm.
Donnie Quiz Kid, he could do whatever he can try his best to get back into the limelight, and he's just gonna fuck it up somehow. John C.
Hmm.
Riley's character can just go through life and like try and get dates and be awkward and have his
And
like
loses his gun on an investigation.
yeah.
And he loses, gets
And,
his
and,
gun stolen from him, and he's a
and he
fuck up.
signs up
And
for
yeah,
this like dating thing where in his answer machine
yeah,
he's got all these things. It's like, oh my god, dude, he's so weird. And then
hmm
he's like trying to talk to the girl, and then he gets invested, and then you find out she's Jimmy Gator's daughter, and there's this subcontext
yeah,
of did he not diddle her? Like there's some things where it's like, dude, which is ironic because he's the host of a game
yeah.
show. Like there's so much stuff that you go on. You got oh my god, I'm forgetting his name. What's the little boy's name? The smart one. Wow.
Donnie, the little
No,
Donnie kid or
no,
whatever.
the
Yeah.
little the one who's Stanley,
Oh,
how he's just
Stanley. Oh, yeah,
how
yeah.
he's so
Stanley. I
smart.
mean, he needs to take a piss, and he's like
Yep,
falling apart during the
yep.
show, and
And it's just
he just
and the
doesn't want to do it
concept of
anymore.
just that of the parents who's just overbearing and forceful, and
Hmm.
and there's plenty of scenes where the dad's actually a decent dad when he can be a dad, but when he's being a mentor,
Mm.
he's like overly doing it. So it's like it's one of those where it's like he's not a complete piece of shit. You don't hate him, but you wish
Hmm.
he would balance it out more. So it's one of those where it's like,
Yeah.
damn, dude, so close. And like the kids going back and forth. You got the little bit from Luis Guzman the first time they answer the question, like, what the fuck is this? And it's so much fun. And then even Donnie Quiz Kid when he's trying to get with the bartender, he's like, oh, I want oral constructive surgery because the guy he likes, he's
Yeah.
got oral constructive surgery. And you got the old man who's like money talks, baby, bullshit walks. Like there's everything, and then just the
Yeah.
song that when it correlates everything going on, it's just magic, dude. The editing in this is just fantastic. Like, yes, it does feel long, but it doesn't feel like 3 hours, and that's the difference. It feels
Hmm.
like a 2.5,
It
2:20.
moves like all these stories interweaving, and like there's some stuff near at the 2 hour mark where the music is like swelling, and like it's when Phil Baker Hall's like about to have his like he's about to collapse on stage, and like Stanley's got to go to the bathroom, and like John C. Riley and the girl are like having this like thing at the apartment, and Frank Mackey's like getting grilled by the reporter lady and all that stuff. Like everything's kind of like just like building, but and like it's really great. And like yeah, we didn't really talk about Tom Cruise. Like he's
Well, I
awesome in this
wanted to
movie.
say
This
that
Frank
for
Frank
last.
Mackey.
That is
He's so great.
the
Like
heart and
he's
soul.
he's incredible.
Yeah.
He I got such like I was watching it and I
That's the
knew Tom
cock
Cruise
off.
was in it, but yeah, and I didn't realize he was like proto Jordan Belfort in this movie,
Oh, yeah.
and I was like, that's amazing because yeah, him doing the motivational stuff is kind of what set it off because that's what he's doing at the end of that movie. But like, he's so good, and he's so charismatic, and so he's got so much energy in this one, and I could see why they nominated him, and I think he
Yep.
deserved it. Yeah, he's
So
great.
I think that the ending of Inception mirrors the ending of this movie in terms of that emotional thing of just the tears sitting at the bedside and just the tears in the eyes,
Mm-hmm.
like I hate you, don't die on me, you son of a, you know what I mean? It's like, and it's
Yeah,
the
yeah,
same
yeah.
thing in Inception where it's like, dude, the fact that a big action movie like Inception, action sci-fi, and then just a
Mm-hmm.
shit happens movie where you can get emotionally invested that much, and then everything with Julianne Moore's character where it's like by the end she's
Mm-hmm.
like, I don't even want the inheritance anymore because I was using him for the longest other time. I fucked all these other guys, I sucked their cocks, but now I love him. And it's just like, dude,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes love can just develop in its own time, and it's just like shit happens once again. And it's just like, oh my god, dude, and all the stories interweave. This movie thematically did, which honestly, what I wish Licorice Pizza would have did. If it would have had the Bradley Cooper have his own thing, if it would have had the boy and the girl separate, also together, if it would have had all these elements like come together, I think it would have
Yeah.
like flowed better. But instead, it was trying to be
Yeah, right.
like a 10-year span of one story that just kind of was
Mhm.
like a day in the life, but over a span of a year or two or however long, you know what I mean? And that's what separated that. this movie just is just so much fun. Yeah, it's just so much
Mhm.
fun, and it's yeah,
Yeah,
I love
and
it.
then when you don't know, I knew something about
Oh,
frogs
yeah,
at
the
the
frogs.
end, but I didn't know like the context of it, right? So, like when John C. Riley and then everybody's just driving around, and all of a sudden, frog starts smacking his windshield and breaking everything, and he's trying to get to the gas station, and Donnie gets smacked around and falls all over the place, and like yeah, and it just gets crazy. You're just like, okay, well this is nuts, but you know what? Why not? Because like I said, life happens, and life
Yep.
is weird, and things, anything can happen, and I rolled with it. So yeah, no, Magnolia was a great surprise, and it was one of those blind spots I'd been meaning to get to for a long time. I actually bought it on Vudu like ages ago, and I just never got around to actually watching it. So yeah, give me an excuse, and yeah, I love Magnolia as well. I think it's one I'm going to go back and watch a couple more times for sure. So it's definitely going to be on my rotation.
Yeah, it's just it. Like I said, it's one that it's a perfect background movie because it is a vibe because it's like a
Hmm.
hangout movie, but like connective story wise, where shit's
Hmm.
actually happening instead of just hanging out. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
So there still is a plot, even though it's low key plotless. Like it's a weird. It
Yeah.
teeters that line. So I would like to hear your number.
Well, I know what your number one is because you talk about it all the time. So I know what your number one is. So I can figure out your number two, obviously. So you'll have to see where I go. So my number two, this might hurt you, but it's There Will Be Blood. My number two is There Will Be Blood. So because I know I'm pretty confident it's your number one. So yeah. So it is what it is, and it's only because I rewatch Boogie Nights way more. So it is what it is. But I will say that this is another one where I hadn't gone back and sat down and watched There Will Be Blood. I think since the theater, I may have seen it at some point in between, maybe. But yeah, I'm pretty confident I hadn't. But here's the thing: with a movie like that, though, I remembered almost everything that happened in the movie, which is
Yep.
which is rare for something that I've had 15 years in between my watchings, where I remembered damn near all the beats and all the big scenes and all that kind of stuff, beat for beat, which goes to show the impact of the movie. The only thing that was a pleasant surprise that I didn't remember was my boy from The Mummy, Benny. Kevin J. O'Connor was his like fake brother halfway
Oh
through the
yeah,
movie.
Henry.
Uh,
Henry out
I
of
was
all
like,
people.
I was like, oh, it's Benny. It's my boy. It's Kevin O'Connor. Like I love it. Yeah. So, but anyways, so yeah, it's this movie's such an
He's also in the
epic
Master. I don't know if
experience.
you remember that. He's
Yeah,
in
no,
the
he
Master.
was there too. Like, and I didn't realize he was like a PTA like regular
Yeah.
guy. I was like, that's awesome. He kind of transit. He's a Steven Summers guy and a PTA guy. So I was like, that's cool. But yeah, he's so that stuff was fun. But yeah, what is there to say about Daniel Day Lewis in this movie? Like as Daniel Plainview, like we've
Top
all
five
done
performance of all time for me.
Daniel Plainview, like imitations and stuff. I'm an oil man. This is my son upon HW. That sort of thing he does. But it's so interesting. I get really invested in like this business dealing stuff. Where these competing oil guys and like them competing for land and him sort of not always swindling people, but definitely like swaying people to his side, and just all of his business dealings. Paul Dano, I mean, the reason why I knew he was going to work in the Batman is if you just watch There Will Be Blood, he's like a master, like he's the man, like, and he can do damn near anything because he's so great as technically the dual roles, which I'd
Yeah.
forgotten about. That he's
Yeah.
both Eli and the other
He's
one. Yeah,
Paul at the
like
very beginning, and then yeah. So
Yeah. So, but yeah, obviously, like he's awesome in every scene he's in, and the stuff where he's dressing down, Daniel Day-Lewis in the chapel, the whole, you abandon your child, all that stuff is great. Yeah, I mean, it's
backslided.
this movie just it's such a great. It's one of the best character studies ever, but it's a character study built around an epically amazing like business sort of not adventure, but it's almost an adventure seeing where this guy goes. And yeah, I love There Will Be Blood. I think it's great. I was listening to the Roca's Cinephiles podcast about it when they were breaking it down over like three parts, and it was interesting. Just breaking it down scene by scene. Yeah, it's an all timer, man. Like it's great. Just for me, it's only number two because here on Let's Rank Stuff, I rank my favorites. not necessarily what I think is the
Absolutely.
actual best. It's my favorite.
Absolutely.
So that's the only reason it's number two. But I'm glad I rewatched it because man, I'm definitely need to put this on a heavier rotation because I really really enjoyed it just as a casual, because I'm more of a Bill the Butcher, Gangs of New York sort of Daniel Day Lewis guy. Like
Okay.
that's my go to for him is Bill the Butcher. But Daniel Plainview's like not far behind. Like
Yeah.
it's like a baby step behind. So
So
yeah, go
There'll Be
ahead, man.
Blood. There'll Be Blood is similar to Shawshank for me, where it's like
Mm-hmm.
when I fell in love with the two movies early,
Mm-hmm.
watched them a bunch. Now I'm at a point where I could literally go a year or two without watching them, watch it, and similar to what you said, just remember everything. And I'm kind of
Mm-hmm.
like building back that freshness. You know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
I've established it, I've seen it enough. I know everything I need to know. I'm like no doubt. Boom, these are top tier, like no doubt. Now let me get away for a little bit so I can kind
Mm-hmm.
of get invested. It has nothing to do with the length, has nothing to do with the content. It's none of that. It's literally just now at this point, similar to like The Godfather, where it's just like, all right, every time I actually do go back and watch it, I'm like, fuck, dude, this movie is great. You know what I mean? Godfather is getting close to
Yeah.
that. When I watched Godfather in the theater a couple weeks ago for the 50th anniversary, and I was like, fuck, dude, this is getting There'll Be Blood, Shawshank vibes. Where I'm just like, this is as
Yeah,
good
and
as
that's
it.
a movie for whatever reason I've watched about 3 times in the last 6 months, The Godfather, and
Exactly.
like for whatever circumstances, and yeah, that movie gets higher and higher and higher on my. It was already
And
in my top 64, but like
yep,
it gets higher and higher and higher, like near that top 20 territory every time I watch it. So
exactly.
yeah, it's
and
great.
it's because
Yeah.
of it has the vibes like this where it's like, dude, it's just so
Hmm.
smart, but it's also just so tight, and it's
Hmm.
everything that it's doing, how it's how it sets up Daniel Plainview, the opening 15 minutes where it doesn't have any words. It's just him and his work ethic and what he's doing, how he's situational when he's got his partner, and then it smashed in the head, and then the child's born, and then when he breaks his leg and he's got to crawl, I mean, everything that he's doing where he's the
Hmm.
determination, he's got the eye on the prize. You know what I mean? He's
Hmm.
going to do whatever it takes. He will. If one door closes, another one opens, and that's the Daniel Plainview is a perfect person for that. Just like when Paul comes to him, he's like, "Hey, there's oil in here. How much you gonna buy for land?" He's like, "Oh, I'll go out there." And then, like you said, he swindles them, he hustles them, he gets into the family's head. It's like,
Hmm.
"Oh yeah, we're gonna build a community," but it's not because he's trying to build a community. He's just trying to take the community over. But he's
Right.
becoming he's like the family man. He just like
Hmm.
the little things when he goes over when he with Eli's dad. He's like, "Oh, does little Mary, does your dad hit you? Your dad's not gonna hit you anymore, right?" And the dad's sitting right there, and he can hear it. And it's just him having that God complex where he's just like,
Hmm.
I am the dictator in the streets. So, you know what I mean? So when you have scenes like in the church scene where Eli actually has the upper hand, because at that point, um, Daniel Plainview, they just had the passing of the one guy. They need the blessing and all that stuff. And he's like, "Oh, and they actually had the back and forth. Even before that, when he like opened up the church or whatever it was, he was like, "Oh, let's bless." Or no, when they did the very first drilling, and he's like, "Oh," Eli was like, "You should
Let
let
me
me."
know. Let me know when you're gonna do
Yeah,
it, so I can put a blessing on it
yeah.
before you do it or
And
whatever.
then
Yeah,
and then Daniel
yeah.
does it, and Eli's like, "Motherfucker," you know what I mean? It's like shit like that where it's just like it's nonstop, just
one
going
one of my
back and
favorite
forth.
lines, like kind of adjacent to that, is when he's just like, "Are you a Christian man?" Or he's like, "I'm a fan of all religions." Like it's such a bullshit answer. I like them all.
What a
Which
political answer.
ironically enough, Donald Trump kind of said the same thing when they asked him about the Bible. What's your favorite book of the Bible? He's like, "Oh, I'm a fan of like all of them." I'm just
Yeah,
like,
that,
dude,
that's
what a
that's
bullshit
that's
answer.
equivalent. He's like, "What's your favorite book in the Bible?" Yes. Like what?
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yes. And then obviously, so the difference of this and what I was just talking about with Boogie Nights, Wolf of Wall Street, Goodfellas, and all those, where it's like the
Hmm.
the downfall technically of this movie is the climax. In terms of
Yeah.
that final scene when HW finally confronts him in the time jump, because after that it's still the
Hmm.
rise. You got two
Well, and
2 hours.
it does a good thing that The Godfather does, where it does these time jumps without hitting you over the head with the time jump. It
Exactly. Yep.
just does it, and it
Mhm.
doesn't treat you like an idiot. Like Godfather does that, where they'll just do a scene where it jumps from this to all of a sudden there's
Next
some
thing you know, he's
Christmas
got a
shit in the
3-year-old
background.
kid.
So you
Yeah.
make sure, yeah, and then the kid's growing up a little bit, or this happens, and you figure it out. Like he doesn't have to
Yep.
spell it out with like a million
Exactly.
title cards telling you exactly what's going on. It's just like you get it. He looks a little older, he's a little more gray in his hair,
Mhm.
he looks a little more grizzled, a little more weathered, a little more seasoned. A kid shows up, he's older. Like you get it. You
Yeah.
figure it out.
So then when you get to that point where they have their confrontation, he's able to,
Mm-hmm.
tell him, he's like, at this point, I don't, you're gonna turn your back on me. It's not about family anymore. You don't want to be my son anymore. Good, you never were. And that's him,
Mm-hmm.
just like that's just his ego getting to him at that point of just his greed. So then when he comes back, and then Eli is like, oh yeah, let's work together, because now he's become a superstar. He's sold out. He's sold out to the devil essentially, where he's like, hey, I'm using my religion for my fame. I'm a rock star, but now I need the money. So let's go ahead and drill. And he's like, okay, then tell me, are you a false prophet? I'm a false prophet. And he's trying to play it off. He's like, I'll just do whatever you want just for this. But like, he's so desperate that he's actually saying it. And then Daniel's like, try, gone, done. We've already done that. And then the whole milkshake scene, you know what I mean, with the straw. And it's just, and then at that point, he's like, I told you I was going to get you. And he gets
it might have taken a little while, but I got you. And I've got you right where I want you.
Like, the movie's called There Will Be Blood, but there's hardly any bloodshed till the end. I'm like, that's not true. There will be blood is a metaphor of like, you need to sacrifice. It's the old, like the religious thing, if you have to sacrifice the virgin or whatever to get whatever, you know what I mean? Kind of like in Cabin in the Woods, and the whole movie's about, sacrificing. And it's a concept.
Well, and oil and blood have always been metaphors for he's drilling the earth. He's sucking the blood of the earth, and sucking it dry and sucking everything dry. He's a vampire. In this movie, he's out to suck everything dry.
Oil, yep.
Yeah,
The very first time when his partner dies, he gets HW. Now he becomes a family man. Now he's not just. Now he's not. It's like in the We're the Millers. Oh, you're gonna let a grangly guy go over the border. What about a guy in a family with a dipshit haircut and who wants to kill himself? Oh yeah, you know what I mean. You're gonna trust that, and that's exactly what Daniel does in there. And then halfway through, when they finally, the oil finally shows, the guy died right before that, and then HW loses his hearing. You know what I mean? But instead of dealing with the sun, he's just staring. It's one of the most beautiful shots when he's just looking at the derrick with the oil. He's got it all over him, the fire and the darkness, the use of light. But
it's beautiful. It's gorgeous. Yeah.
Honestly, that's probably when I get a back tattoo, that scene, and I'm just gonna have that whole thing. You know what I mean? That's what it's beautiful. And at the very end, he finally he sacrificed his ego, and he lost his son, and now he's finally going to kill Eli. And guess what? I'm finished.
I'm finished. I'm just
it's dead. And it's just, I love it. So yeah, There'll Be Blood. I never know where it is in my top 10 just because of, rewatchability, quote stuff. It'll never leave my top 10. It's just a matter of like, where exactly do I want to put it?
Shuffle it around.
Yeah. But it's been a staple in my top 10 for, at this point, 5+ years. I mean, it's a Henry movie, like no means, and I love it. But similar to that, your number one
is Boogie Nights. I'll let you talk about you take your number one spot because it's your PTA is your guy, so I'll let you get the final word. But yeah, no, Boogie Nights. I love this movie since the first time I saw it. I like I said, I'm pretty sure I rented it from Blockbuster, checked it out. This movie is just so much fun. It rocks. And even in the stuff where there's the decline, I'm still into it when they're trying to make like a record and like I said, when they're just trying all this stuff and it's just not working, and all the stuff with Alpha Molina is great. But yeah, like the chunk of this movie, like that middle chunk of the movie is so good. Like when they're making these buddy cop movies and they're just rolling, and Burt Reynolds is on fire, and everybody's just clicking. It's just so much fun, and he does a great job. PTA does with really getting you into this world that you may not have understood of just like, oh, they're just making these corny whatevers. But like you get into Burt Reynolds wants to make cinema, like even in this type of cinema, he wants to make great movies. He wants to make stuff that's fun.
Which we might see 15 years later at X. You know what I mean? Like
yeah, right. It's like we want to make like a real movie. Yeah, which I saw X. That's it's not Boogie Nights, but it's something. Like Mark Wahlberg is so just like this. He just going from like this kind of shy guy, who knows what he has, but he has no confidence, and going to being this like just absolute monster, cocaine fueled, maniac. It's just a fun journey to go on, and watching John C. Reilly as kind of his partner, who almost like in Talladega Nights, like he wants to be number one, but he'll never be number one. Let me win one every now and then. Can I win this one? And can I be the star of this one? No, like you're the side guy. Like just be the side guy.
Fun fact, but that was the time that he posed for Playboy as Mike Honcho and spread his butt cheeks. It was in this movie. Like
there you go.
Jesus Christ. John C. Reilly.
Yeah, yeah, he is. But yeah, the whole ensemble is just great. Like we talked about, yeah, Philip Seymour Hoffman is so good as the awkward, cameraman, or boom guy or whatever. And yeah, like William H Macy, where all of his stuff goes with real porn star Nina Hartley, by the way, as his wife that's screwing around on him. But yeah, like everything for me just clicks. Don Cheadle's great. Trying to sell this, country music,
Yeah,
with
bass.
all this stuff. Yeah, yeah, doing the country music,
The TX 1000 or whatever he
subwoofers.
calls it. Like,
Yeah,
K
they're just not
1000, something
into
like
it.
that. Jesus.
Yeah, like everything just clicks for me. I have a blast. It's a really just fun ride. Like for me, like it's just like there Will Be Blood and Boogie Nights are similar in that they're both a ride, and this definitely like this time period, where you get invested, full on into it. I just have a little more fun with Boogie Nights than I do with There Will Be Blood, because obviously one's a little more serious than the other one is.
Yeah.
But yeah, Boogie Nights, and maybe it's because it sort of has that. Like you could see Scorsese making a movie similar to this, like you could definitely see it, and I
There's
know
definitely
that
inspiration.
PTA was influenced by him. Yeah, there's definitely inspiration there, which is fine, but it's just one of those things that I definitely vibe with it, and it's just a rocker from beginning to end. So I love Boogie Nights a lot, and I go back to it pretty frequently. It's
Yeah,
it's good stuff.
absolutely. Plus, killer soundtrack. A lot of quotes.
Oh yeah.
I'm a star. I'm a star. You know what I mean? Like, it's
Hmm.
just and then even in the beginning, like back when he is Eddie, when he's dealing with the
Hmm.
stuff with his mom, she's like, "You're a loser. Don't call me that." Or no, "You're stupid. Don't call me that." You know what I mean? Where it just builds up the confidence. And then
Yeah,
that
yeah.
leads into later when he gets in the confrontation with Burt Reynolds. He's like, "I'm the one with the big dick." You know what I mean? Like, this is my do it.
You'd be
We're
nothing
doing it my
without
way.
me.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
exactly. And it's just it definitely comes full circle. It ends, and that's why at the end, ironically, that's why he has to do it. He's like, "Hey, you're a star," and then he pulls out the dick for the first time with the plastic rubber reveal, and then it's like, all right, because at the end of the day, that's the stem of his confidence, and that's always going to
Hmm.
be his anchor, no pun intended. So, yeah, it's a fun movie. It just at this point, as years have gone by, this has been the least in terms of my favorites of the favorites. You know what I mean? Of my 5 stars,
Yeah,
but it's technically more horrible than the Master. So, like any given Sunday, they could bounce back and forth. But my top 3 will
gotcha.
always be cemented and probably be top
Hmm.
100, whereas Boogie Nights is probably just on the outside. But yeah, I have no judgments on that, and I'd love to talk about it anytime. Like if we ever want to,
Yeah,
rank
yeah.
porn movies, we can definitely talk about it again. No,
Sure. All
All
right.
right,
Well, the third one in the series was just not as shot well, and the angle. Yeah, no.
we
Yeah,
we we we
good
had
stuff.
we had, or it's like a disaster artist when they're doing the sex scene. He's like, why is he thrusting into her belly button? Like,
Yeah, it's so
how
weird.
is the shot of
Why are we just getting shots of his ass? Like,
his
what's going
ass?
on?
We
Like,
need more abs.
yeah, more
Oh
ass.
my god!
Yeah.
All right,
All right. So
so
your number one's obviously Punch Drunk, right? So so
no,
let
no,
us let us in on.
there will be blood. There will be blood. There will be blood.
Oh, your number one was there. I'm sorry, I got him backwards, but yeah,
Yeah,
that's what I thought. I didn't think you had talked about your number two being Punch Drunk yet or whatever. So,
yeah. So yeah,
but we
so
kind
I
of
guess
talked about it already.
I guess I will touch on that.
We
So
skipped over it. We skipped
yeah,
over
yeah.
it. Yeah.
So the only thing that I'll add to Punch Drunk, everything you said about the family stuff and the crime stuff is great. But the reason that this finally clicked for me is the element of Barry and Lena of just the outsiders.
Mm,
It's a reminder that regardless of who you are as a person, how you feel, what you represent, there's always going to be someone for you, even if they just fall out of the sky like a piano. You know what I mean? It's one of those where it's the
yeah.
metaphor where it's like someone's going to be there for you. Don't give up. You know what I mean? Someone is going to accept you for your idiosyncrasies. When I always forget that word.
Idiosyncrasies.
Idiosyncrasies, your
Yeah.
awkwardness, your weirdness, your shyness, your anger, all your flaws. Like no one's perfect, and this is the epitome of that. It's like no one's perfect, but you might, even though you're not perfect, you can be perfect for each other, and that's what this exactly is. It's like they slowly build the confidence, and the scene in Hawaii when they finally have their kiss, and it's like just their chemistry is so awkwardly perfect. Like they do a great job of like. I didn't even need bring my car. I just wanted to talk to you. I saw a picture of you. Your sister's trying to introduce
Yeah.
me. And then the scene after he beats up the bathroom because he loses his confidence. He's like, I'm on this beautiful date. And then, everything, the confidence. And then everything with when he's doing the sex thing, he's like, I'm not even calling a sex lady because I want to do sex stuff. I just want someone to talk to, dude. I'm lonely. And you know what I mean?
And she keeps interrupting him. She's just like,
Your
"Are you
cock hard? You
stroking your
stroking it?
cock right now?" Yeah. It's
No,
like, well,
no, no, I'm
are you
not.
do you have your pants off yet? All this stuff. It's
No,
just
I
like,
do
no,
not.
no, I just want to talk.
And
Where are you? What are you
so
doing?
then, when he finally gets that with Lena, it's like he's not as awkward with her, and it's like that's the one time where he doesn't have that. So then
Mhm.
and then that's what finally gets him to snap when he has the most confident, albeit with violence, when he sees her get
Mhm.
injured. When they get in that car crash, and he's like, "You heard
Yeah.
it," and he just starts fucking them up, and it's like one of those because the last time they got into it, he's running like a little bitch, and then the second time when she gets affected, he beats the shit out of them. So it's like clearly he can carry his
Yeah.
own and he can fight. And it's one of those he just needs that, that heart and soul. And that's always connected with me. Like I said, that's the tagline for this movie. Even they may not be perfect, but they're perfect for each other, and I love that. It's just when that clicks because that's just like what when we talk about movies on the internet, dude. We're like outsiders of our own personal lives, but we can meet up online. We
Yeah.
can be whoever we want. We can accept each other for who we are as people, not for what people might think about us. You know what I mean? And this is a
Yeah.
perfect example of that. And it's a great double feature with Uncut Gems in terms of shit's gonna be weird and just be nonstop frantic. And Adam Sandler is able to do it because he's still able to have his Adam Sandler stuff going on, but he's so reserved for like 90% of this movie that when he does have his outbursts, it feels earned because the story pushed him to that part. You know what I mean? Like take
Yeah.
out
Yeah. Yeah.
you didn't have any recollection or any experience with Adam Sandler's comedy movies. The blow up scenes within this movie are like, yo, I feel sorry for him that he got pushed that far that he had to snap because this poor guy, you know what I mean? And like, when they have him pull out the money at the ATM, he's like, that's all I got, and that's a lot of money to me. You know what I mean? He's like
Yeah.
starting my own business, or even the one scene when he's doing the plunger and he's smashed. He's like, this is unbreakable. He smashed like, oh, that must be an old one. Like he's so embarrassed.
That's the older model. That's not the
Yeah.
newer model.
He's like, and then he just yells like, I said to replace that one. He's just trying, you know what I mean? It's just I love
Yeah.
it, and it's a combination of my love for Adam Sandler, but my love for PTA, and then just my love of the
Mm.
Outcast. You know what I mean? Like even like here, my NF hat, NF my favorite rapper, like he has a song, The Outcast, where it's like we don't have to be for everyone, we just be for who we are, our group, and it symbolizes that perfectly. So yeah, Punch Drunk Love is one where it's I had this conversation with Brian when I was doing the Against the Grain podcast, and he hated this movie, and I got him to watch it. I think it was because he never gave it a shot, and just on paper he didn't want to, and he
Mm.
didn't hate it as much as he thought because it really there are layers to it, but he also didn't get it on my level either. So I definitely understand it, but yeah, I've always tried to like pitch that to people. It's like, don't think of this as a straightforward romance. Don't think of this as a straightforward like weird crime drama. Definitely don't think of this as a straight up Adam Sandler movie. Mix a
Mhm.
little bit of each, and then when you realize that, it works more. And like I said, the only thing that didn't work for his relationship on that, so maybe my concept of the outcast and the awkwardness, it's all for a reason. That's why it worked for me. Maybe it works for you, and if not, then next time I'm still glad you like 80% of the movie. And guess what? It's only a 90-minute movie, so 80% of a 90-minute movie is
Yeah.
kind of a lot.
Some
So
of the shorter ones.
yeah,
Yeah.
so it's definitely a rewatchable one, and that's another reason why it skyrocketed, like over Magnolia, for example, just because of like it's so short, but it still hits on those levels, and the satisfying end, where he didn't. And when you think about it, the end scene with Philip Seymour Hoffman, that's that match, man. And he's able to win with his words, not with violence and not with anger. And it's like that's a good arc. You know what I mean? It's like I feel like that's a
Yeah.
very underrated scene because it's not the over the top climax that a lot of this movie could have gone into. Like, for example, I love Sleeping with Other People. But when Jason Sudeikis' character punches Adam Scott, it's like, is that necessary? Like, I get it, but like, does violence have to be the answer for this type of thing? It's like where Punch Drunk Love, it's not. It literally is the words like, "Hey, you're a bad man. Don't do that." You know what I mean? It's like because at the end of the day, even if you punch him, are you really gonna change his opinion? Are you gonna change what he's doing?
No.
At least you can try and do it what's right. So that's why Punch Drunk Love hits for me. But I definitely, I'm glad you like it, and I'm glad it's that.
Mhm.
But let's talk about a couple that we don't like as much. Our number 9.
We didn't have to go very far on this one. We're
Yeah.
not as far off as you probably thought we were going to be. So
I
yeah,
wasn't sure
this
where
is
you were
not
going to
bad.
be at with Magnolia and Punch Drunk. Those were the two.
Okay,
I just
gotcha.
didn't know exactly because of the
Mm.
inexperience with Magnolia and the weird mindset we had with Punch Drunk last time, where it's like I don't know. So
Yeah,
the fact that they were at the top, I'm
yeah.
cool with that. I'm happy. Number 8, Licorice Pizza. No surprise there.
Hmm.
Number 7, I decided to give you the edge on this one. Phantom Thread.
Okay.
I decided let's go hard 8. Number 6.
Hmm.
Number 5, we are going to go with The Master.
Master. Yeah.
Number 4 is unfortunately going to be Punch Drunk Love. Number 3 is the 3-hour epic Magnolia, and as you kind of alluded to earlier, number 2 Boogie Nights, and number 1
Mhm.
There Will
All
Be.
right.
That is
Very
our
cool.
rankings for Paul Thomas Anderson. This was a great conversation.
Yeah.
This and Darren Aronofsky are 2 of the ones where I had no idea where it was going to go, and it fucking worked.
You're
You know
right.
what I mean? That's why we have
Yeah.
that's why we talk about these types of directors, because they invoke conversation. You know what I mean? Like when you
Mhm.
have Nolan, when you have Spielberg, Scorsese, Tarantino, stuff like that, the fanboy comes out. But like these are ones where it's like they're not polarizing per se, but they're so not even niche. They're just, you know what I mean? They're more film bro-y, or they're more film nerd type of
Yeah. Yeah.
directors. So they don't really get the expanded conversation as often. So you just never know where people are gonna, even ironically, Del Toro, even, you know what I mean, to an extent where it's like
Sure.
he's
Yeah.
borderline because he has some of his, pop blockbusters, but he's that. But like, yeah, so I'm glad, people talk about There'll Be Blood, Boogie Nights, Punch, the top 3, but the bottom no one really talks about. So I'm definitely glad that we had, overall a really good conversation. So yeah,
Yeah.
we went on a hiatus for a couple weeks, so we actually don't necessarily know where we're going to be at for next week. So you definitely have to stay tuned on that. We have 100 ideas. So
I was going to show this. So this is my note app. And I don't know if you can see that, but I've been deleting them as we go. But we can scroll and scroll and scroll. I've compiled about 100 of these filmographies, and also these either franchises or those versus franchises, whatever for the smaller ones. I've got literally 100 things on here, so we could go anywhere pretty much and do just about anything the way we kind of formatted it. So
yeah,
that's
so
the
when
cool
we
thing
go
about
off
that.
air, we'll definitely come up with an
We'll
agreement,
talk
probably
about
for
it.
the next 2, so we can start planning it out. So
Yeah.
give us some updates on your other channel and everything
Yeah.
that you're doing. What's going on over there?
Yeah, we're doing good. So over on the Movie Hero Network, we've got a couple different shows going on. That's where most of them are. So me and Jacob Barber have a podcast about movies. We just put out an episode where we're talking about sort of Razzie's got it wrong, because we try to keep it positive over there. So movies, nominations and things that we feel like didn't deserve it, or their nominations have not aged well, with the film communities and things, things that it doesn't look too hot when you go back and look at them. So we're talking about those. The podcast about wrestling, I don't know if has turned into the Lonely Marks podcast. So that we're doing that, and we're going to be doing another one of those episodes tomorrow night. We're going to be doing a retro review of Backlash 2000. So if you're into wrestling, join us over there. And yeah, we've always got tournament fights or tier ranker fights or something going on the Movie Hero Network. Plenty of stuff. We do about 2 of those a week, so go check it out.
Absolutely.
Yeah, good stuff.
There you go. And you can check out myself and Austin over on TMG Entertainment. We're doing Movie Battleground stuff. A lot of fun. We love to debate and talk about movies on that. We kind of talked about that earlier when we kind of hinted at our debate that me and him both had. PTA, most underrated PTA. He said Magnolia. I said Punch Drunk Love. That was a lot of fun.
So I know it hurt his soul to argue against something he loves, like Magnolia
exactly.
or whatever. But and again, I knew you loved Punch Drunk Love a lot, so that was hard to argue against that. But we go all in on Battleground. We have to sell it to the judges. No
I literally said
we
the movie sucks.
feel.
I said Magnolia.
Yeah. No, your last thing was like, it's 3 hours. The movie sucks. And I was just like, I knew that. It's like, hey, you got to sell it. It's wrestling. You got to sell it. So
exactly.
I get it. I get it.
Yeah. So on top of that, I officially am starting There Will Be Trivia singles, which is going to be a triple threat format of a movie trivia league, but it's also going to be with a point standard value instead of just a record. So first place gets 2 points, second place gets 1 point, third place unfortunately gets nothing. But there are also bonus points for knockouts and technical knockouts. We also have the There Will Be Horror with myself and John Maurer on Mondays. We also have There Will Be Trivia Open that's still going to be existing, which is a 3-on-3 format, bar trivia, movie trivia specific style, which is going to be 3-on-3s, a lot of fun, chill, no cares in the world. Brian and JPO write a lot of matches. Antonio wants to dip his feet in. Malcolm says he wants to dip his feet in. Different writers, plus myself, obviously. And then the War Room, which is something that I decided I want to do more impromptu style, where it's like, hey, we have a group together. Let's just pitch a question, just kind of go back and forth for a couple seconds and have a blast and just keep it at that. So, yeah, so that's pretty
I
much
think it could
everything
be
there.
more fun to have one that's not as planned out, where it's like you just got to think on the fly of your answers
Exactly.
and just
Yep.
defend them right off the fly. Like maybe give everybody a minute or two to come up with an answer or whatever, and then
Yep.
just hit it. You know what I mean? And just go. So even if you hate, like the other thing, you got to think of on the fly of stuff to knock it for. That would be kind of fun just to
Exactly.
see what comes out. So yeah, that'd be fun.
Yeah, I'll give you a good example. I told Jay to pick a topic. He picked Kevin Smith. We went
Hmm.
with instead of just doing like best and worst, I told him it was him and JPO. I was like, all right, what Kevin Smith movie would be better if Jay and Silent Bob took over the main characters? And they pitched Iron Man and Rhodey and
Yeah.
I think maybe two of the Guardians or something. I don't remember exactly, but it's something along those lines where it's like you can just make some bullshit up stuff. You don't need to prep. You could just have a little fun and just use your
Star
words.
Trek Insurrection with Captain Picard and I don't know Data or something like that. Or you could do old school Star Trek with Kirk and Spock. You got Jay and Silent Bob. So there you go. Have fun.
There you go. Well,
Yeah.
like I said, make sure to subscribe to the channel because we're just gonna have a bunch of kooky, wacky stuff over there. And
Yeah.
if you're not already, join the Facebook group because
Hit the bell so you get alerts when we go
yes,
live with stuff like
because
that. Yeah, hit
even
the
though
bell.
we try and be consistent on Wednesdays, it's not always the
Mhm.
exact time. So if you hit the bell, you
Well,
know
and
exactly.
and we'll probably do one next week. We might have to do it a little later because I'm closing that night, but we'll do one. You know what I mean? So it might just
Yeah,
have to be a late show, but yeah, we'll
that's
do
fine.
it. But Hammer's a night owl, so you don't mind that.
Yeah, that works
He's
for
up
me.
all the time. He's up
So
late doing
basically,
trivia's and all kinds of goofy stuff late at night. So yeah.
you may lie. All right. So with that
Yeah.
said, sorry for the couple weeks off, but hey, when you get back to it, it's like
Hey.
we never left. So my name's Henry Confidential. That is Austin Pesal, and this is where you show up, and this is where we show out and rank stuff. Have a great night.